Is it wrong for someone to masturbate to photos of their spouse?
Well, we've answered thousands of questions over the last decade of counseling with couples, and this gal is not the first person to ask this question. So if you're a married Christian, you've likely had this question too.
So we decided to answer it publicly this time, and here's what this anonymous caller said. She said, "My husband and I have been married for 7 years, and he's currently working out of town. He recently confessed his porn problem, so we've been working through that. I'm trying to help him stay clean while he's out of town, and he asked me to send him pictures of me to masturbate to. So I guess my question is it wrong for my husband to masturbate to photos of me?"
So we have a few thoughts on this, but we want to start with this, that Esther Perel said this once: secrets are the buffer to intimacy. From what we see here from the question, we know that he has been struggling with pornography. There's been broken trust. And when broken trust is in the picture, this could be a very, very sensitive subject.
For sure. And I know that's not the question you asked. It sounds like you would be in the loop potentially. But if he's masturbating on his own at times that you're not aware of, even if it's to pictures of you, there's still a secret involved. You're wondering, did you masturbate today? What did you do today? Did it lead you to want to look at other pictures? So this is a time of rebuilding trust. You don't want to add more secrets to you guys trying to rebuild trust.
Well, the fact that she sent this question in tells me that she's not exactly sure or ready to be setting those things. So it's not that it's bad here that we want to focus on. We want to focus on the marriage in the sense of, is sending pictures to a man that recently is, or we'd say is right now working on building trust back and getting clean from porn. Is it healthy? Is it helpful? So getting away from just, oh, that's bad, but is this helpful to rebuilding trust in his marriage?
So the second point that I would make is you can't help him stay clean. I know that's a lot of wives or spouses of someone who's going through any kind of addiction for that matter. They try to get in a position of helping their spouse stay clean. And really that just puts you in a codependent relationship. So you can't help him stay clean, and your body is not a replacement for porn. You're a subject, not an object. And so if you're sending him these pictures of yourself and it's essentially a replacement for porn, he's not rewiring his brain for intimacy. He's bonding to inanimate objects, granted of you, but he's still bonding to something that's not a living human being that he's engaging with the way God designed our bodies to do.
Yeah. Well, throughout the Bible, sex has always been an activity. It's not a solo activity. It's an activity with a man and a wife, and it's for joining together in a beautiful act where there is good and delight and connection and all those things that God created relationship between a husband and a wife to bring. But in this could be a solo act, which doesn't bring connection,
Right.
Especially if you're not okay with it. So the first kind of caution that we'd say is, are you feeling comfortable being the spouse who's had their trust broken? Are you feeling like this is a good move for you? And given the context that you've already shared here, from a clinical perspective, we would not suggest to do this. I just don't think it's going to move you forward in the direction that you really want. You want trust building, you want openness, and I don't think him wiring to a screen without you knowing, or at times where you're not there with him, I don't think that would be helpful at this point.
Yeah. So, okay, let's take context out here for everyone who's listening, because thousands of people are wondering, but my husband is not recovering from porn, and this is not a trust building issue.
Or maybe he is, but it's been a long time ago.
Perhaps. And so you've maybe done all the right things to work through and grow out of the porn addiction, and the intimate connection in your marriage is secure. Then what? Is it a sin to masturbate? That's another question we get a lot. So we'll start there, and we'll give you some guiding questions to see if this is okay for your marriage. But we'll also give you some context here.
And this is where we open up the comment section for the debate.
Okay, so first question is masturbation mentioned in scripture? Some people will try to say that in Genesis 38, when Onan let his seed fall on the ground and, God cursed him and said that it was wrong, that was masturbation. That's really not a great case against masturbation. What he did was wrong, but what he did is he was not allowing his brother's lineage to move forward. His brother had died. He was fulfilling the duty to his brother, which was to impregnate his brother's wife. It's an Old Testament. Yeah, it's really weird. But that was his duty, and he did not fulfill his duty. He instead let his seed fall on the floor. So what was wrong is that he did not let his brother's lineage with his wife move forward. So it wasn't even an issue of masturbation.
Right. Well, that's why God was angry.
Exactly.
It's because that's what that was in the Levitical laws to do, to make sure or to honor your brother. Mm-hmm. And he went against that. This has nothing to do with masturbation. Mm-hmm. And really there isn't any talk about masturbation in the Bible.
Right.
So then we have to pull, okay, well then how do we look at it from a scriptural point of view without direct cases or direct verses to cite?
So what we do see throughout scripture is, especially in the Song of Solomon, we see a lot of playfulness between the man and his wife. Mm-hmm. And we see a lot of different focus on different parts of the body. We see all 5 senses being engaged. Mm-hmm. We've mentioned before in other episodes, but we see various kinds of sexual acts, not just intercourse. We see a lot of kissing and touching and tasting and smelling. So if we're looking at scriptural context for a godly sexual relationship, could it be that masturbating or touching each other's genitals or one's own genitals while engaging in a sexual act is permissible and even celebrated? It could be, but then we wouldn't call that masturbation because it's not a solo activity. Yeah. That would just be foreplay for that matter.
Well, yeah, and we'd consider that under the wider umbrella of sex.
Correct.
And the reason why I say this is because you've heard the argument from young people that have crossed the line and gone way too far and touched each other. And they said, if they turn to you and say, no, we're masturbating, you would say, no, you're not. You're having sex. You may not be having intercourse, but you're having sex. Mm-hmm. So we would apply this to the marriage bed as well. And God's very concerned with you having sex with your partner, with your spouse, having a good time, enjoying this together. And that's the element that we really want to focus on, is that when you're doing these things, it's not in secret, it's not hidden, but it is together.
So then let's put it in the context of being away. Let's say your spouse is, like you said, working out of town, I think. Okay, so he's long distance for a long time. He's not going to be back. Let's say it's a couple months. In the case of military, it can be a long time. So then if you are on the phone or FaceTime together and you're touching while you engage in that sexual connection and conversation, is that wrong? We would put that in the same category as what we've been talking about. It's foreplay. It's playful touching with your spouse.
And with the disclaimer that you have to think this through for yourself and be like the Bereans, study to show yourself approved. Really work this out throughout the Bible. Talk to your pastor if you like. But where we have landed on this is that we would put, phone sex or together doing sexual acts in the I don't know. We would not put that under the umbrella of masturbation.
Yeah, it's in the broad umbrella of sex.
Right.
Right. Which is you being intimate with your spouse. It's a good thing.
And why we would say too that this is a good thing is because there are a lot of people, because of technology, that are living in very different places, or they're not home very often, or maybe it's just for a time and they have to do it for their, whatever their situation. But, the Bible is very clear that abstaining from sex within marriage is not a good thing either.
Right.
So I think there would be a case to be made that, hey, be sexual, have fun, be connected, even as much as technology allows.
And we would recommend, even if your spouse is out of town and you guys are engaging in that sexual connection on FaceTime, you could send sexy pictures back and forth. I think that's great. But we would recommend even then, it's best to engage together, when you're connected live together. There might be situations, I probably military situations is what comes to mind first, but there might be situations in which you are not going to be connected live with each other for weeks or months at a time. And in that case, is it okay to have a picture of your spouse and touch yourself sexually, engaging with that picture of your spouse? That's a question that you guys have to answer. But best practice, we would say, do it together.
Yeah.
Even if it's a long distance situation.
And so here's some guiding questions for you, because we're not just going to lay down a yes or no for this debate here. But what we want to do is, hey, let's have a conversation. And you guys might think that we're wrong. All right. Well, let's have a conversation about it and talk about the reasons for why you think we're wrong or right, for that matter. So here's some questions for you guys to begin thinking about this together. So the first one is this mutually agreed upon and comfortable for both of us? Do we both feel respected in our decision? And can we say no without consequence? So that's the first one. Can we agree upon this thing?
Yeah. It's not just one person convincing the other person for their own selfish, gratification, but is it agreed upon and comfortable? We both feel respected.
And I would say comfortable to a point, because if you're watching this video, you might feel that hesitancy of like, is this right or wrong? But once you have an idea of like, hey, we could try this. I'm not worried that, I'm being taken advantage of, and, maybe you can go out on a limb a little bit. It may not be completely like relaxed because this might be your first time, but enough that you don't feel, I think what I'm getting at is you don't want to feel coerced into doing this.
Right. And by the way, if it's a matter of comfort level with like digital technology, you can download apps. There's a few apps that we've recommended, and we can throw it in the show notes as well. But they have encrypted and secure end-to-end technology where it's just between you and your spouse. So that's one way to go about it. Another way to go about it is to print a Polaroid together and send that in your spouse's suitcase. So different ways of going about that.
There you go.
Okay, second question. Does this enhance our emotional and physical intimacy? Will it strengthen our connection and align with our understanding of marital intimacy?
This is just a fabulous, is it taking away? Mm-hmm. So in this case, I think it would take away, give an example that we
person who called in,
it would take away, I think, from marital intimacy. But in the case of the second group of people that we're talking to, this might, if you're traveling and you haven't seen each other for 2 weeks, you're like, man, I just really miss my wife, and I really want to be intimate with her. I would think it would bring a lot of intimacy.
It could, as long as it's mutually agreed upon and it aligns with your values. That's the next question. Does this decision maintain alignment with our values and build trust without external influences? And so again,
how would one go about understanding their own values around it?
Well, it's having those conversations with your spouse. You could start with this expectations card deck if you wanted to really try to unpack what your values are, what any previous triggers are, sexual experiences that would hinder bringing this idea into your relationship. But like in the case of this person who called in, this question, does this build trust? I don't think it would for you right now. So I think the answer to that question would be no. And therefore, let's not use that as a way to, I forget what she said, try to help him
stay clean.
Yeah. And then the last question, are we open to change and communication?
This is a very big one. Whenever we're making change in a marriage, I've seen a lot of couples kind of stop right before making any big decisions because they're worried about crossing over the threshold and never being able to come back. So if you guys can say, look, I'm willing to try this, But if this feels really bad to me or it feels wrong, can we come back and discuss this again?
Right.
I think that would be very helpful. Also, the other way, hey, I'm willing to think about this with you, but could we do some biblical studies on this so that I can feel a little bit more comfortable before embarking on this adventure? Mm-hmm. Those are good and I think helpful guidelines.
Yes.
For marriages.
We'll link a couple of resources for you, by the way. One that comes to mind is an episode we did, I think last summer of 2023, and it was called Freedom in the Bedroom. So we include a lot of biblical pieces for permissions and prohibitions around sexuality in Scripture. So we'll include that link in the show notes for you guys, as well as sexpectations.
Because the Bible just might be a little bit more sexy than you're willing to give it credit for being.
You might be a little bit more prudish than Scripture. So we'll put that in there. Also, if you guys have a question like this and you're like, I don't want to ask this question to anyone I know, maybe I'll ask it to Adam and Carissa. Feel free. We'll put a link in the show notes to our speak pipe, and you can record yourself asking the question, and we can include you and your voice in our episode.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time.